Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and today we'll be talking about some of my favorite, some of the best classes in Classic WoW that's going to be released very soon. And this video, just by saying best classes, is a bit of a meme because straight up I'll be talking about raiding specs, I'll be talking about classes and the most popular specs for them, I'll be talking about some of the rotation, maybe lack of rotation. We'll be covering a lot of things in this video because I know a lot of people want to pick a class, or maybe they're unsure about which class to play. You need to make a decision. Do you want to be some sort of a utility player, or do you want to be that pure DPS, pure healing, or whatever? Because sometimes knowing that you bring a lot of utility to the raid, knowing that you supplement other members, and then being the underdog and then doing a ton of damage or doing a decent amount of damage can really bring a lot of joy to a lot of players. I know for a fact being an underdog can feel great when you're doing, when you're pushing yourself. So you need to make a decision. Do you want to be a pure DPS, a pure healer, or whatever? Or do you want to also, provide utility to the raid? Don't get me wrong, there are certain classes and specs in the game that can do both as well. And again, another thing, best classes, all of this min-maxing is a bit ridiculous because a lot of the times the classic raids they're just not that hard. They really are not that hard. There's a lot of information out. There's a lot of theory crafting being done, and why should you focus on bringing the best specs or the best classes for this specific raid, even though the raid is not that hard? A lot of people will compare classic raiding to something like retail looking for group raiding. So it's, it really isn't that difficult. But that doesn't stop people from min-maxing. That doesn't stop people from really mastering their specs. And I can foresee that with the introduction of add-ons, a lot of discussion has been made about looking for group add-ons. A lot of discussion is going to be made probably about add-ons that will simulate gear scores. I see that happening as well. The experience is not going to be the same. If you're playing Classic and you want to feel the exactly same nostalgia trip, you want to be brought back to the time when you first played Classic, that is not going to happen. There are far too many things that are going to interfere. There's a lot of add-ons, there's a lot of it's a different time of day. Now this video is not going to discuss these add-ons that will influence the gameplay, whether it's going to be for the worse, whether it's going to be for the better. That's up to you to decide. This is not that type of video. I could make an additional video besides that. But first of all, let's look at some of the specs and classes that I consider to be, or at least the community considers to be very strong. And we'll talk about a class that I feel to some extent could be considered one of the best, if not one of the best in Classic WoW, and that is Warrior. Warrior, there are two very strong roles that a warrior can fill, and that is DPS through Fury Warrior or tanking through Protection. Now, Protection arguably could be said as one of the only or the true tanking specs in the game, because Protection Warriors have tier sets that are kind of aimed at tanking. Protection Warriors have defensive cooldowns. Yeah, I know, right? That sounds weird, with Shield Wall and Last Stand. And again, Protection Warriors actually have taunt, unlike Protection Paladins. Protection Paladins actually have to rely on groups to not over aggro them. Keep in mind that aggro is probably one of the main mechanics for majority of the bosses in Classic, and there is a lot of bosses who are deemed to be extremely hard because DPS cannot watch their aggro meters. So aggro is actually a really important concept. All of the retail players will probably be, what is aggro? I don't understand. But in Classic, aggro plays a big part, and Protection is extremely strong. Protection Warrior is extremely strong tank, and probably used in every raid that's going to be released, because Classic is going to have staggered release. Fury Warrior is probably one of the best DPS in the game, and you have to consider, DPS Warrior will not be able to output the same damage if they don't have, let's say for example, Shaman in the group who can provide Wind Fury Totem. Wind Fury Totem is extremely strong. Shaman totems are only group wide, so if you're playing Horde, you'll probably want to have Shaman in every single group who will provide these specific totems. That's what I mean. Utility classes, things like Shamans, can feel really good when you know you're supplementing your whole raid through your totems. But Fury Warrior is definitely in there in terms of the DPS. There's a lot of logs, there's a lot of information. The downside, there's probably going to be 1 billion warriors in Classic during the Classic release. They're definitely probably the most popular classes, and also the fact that their leveling experience is absolutely atrocious. Leveling as a melee in general is extremely hard, but you have to keep in mind that classic raiding is actually more suited towards melee classes in general, and you'll see a lot of melee classes being stacked, and I'll talk about that later on. Now, in terms of other melee DPS classes, Rogue is definitely in there. Rogue is an extremely popular choice. It's probably going to be the #1 choice for your stream snipers, because there's going to be a lot of people who will want to make their favorite streamer cry or rage quit, and they'll definitely try a Rogue. And in terms of Rogue and in terms of raid performance, a lot of people will tend to go combat source specialization. That's very popular PvE raiding spec or raiding build for rogues in general. But rogue build is heavily demanded or shaped by their weapons. So you gotta save all that DKP if a weapon drops so you can get it, because there's 39 other people who might wanna roll for it. You have to remember, it's 40-man raiding. There's not a whole lot of loot that's being dropped. You really, loot really matters. So Rogue in general is another very strong pick in terms of pure DPS. They're strong in PvP, especially world PvP and things like that. If we talk about range DPS in general, I feel range they're somewhat balanced, or at least they're all right. I think the most popular range DPS at this time would be Warlocks, Mages, and Hunters. Now, you could argue the fact that ranged rotation can be viewed as very bland. Now, why do I say that? Because if you look at Warlocks, for example, Demonic Sacrifice build is very popular, where you summon your Succubus, you sacrifice your Succubus for 15% extra shadow damage, and you just basically cast Shadow Bolt over and over again. This is very similar to what the Burning Crusade Warlock was like, and I played a Warlock in Burning Crusade, and I have really fond memories. I know it was just Shadow Bolt, Shadow Bolt, Shadow Bolt, but I had very fond memories of doing this. Some people might consider this to be very boring, some people might consider this to be very fun because they can catch up on their favorite TV shows, on Netflix or whatever when they're raiding. It gives you time. Maybe try out Peggle. There's a new add-on, or at least they're trying to introduce Peggle in Classic as well. So you have time. So very personal opinion in terms of Warlock rotation. The same kind of deal happens with Mages. Mages will probably go somewhere between Arcane Frost builds for Molten Core, because you have to remember that fire only becomes relevant when mobs are not immune to fire damage, and that becomes later down the line when, again, Classic has staggered releases. So a lot of the times Mages go something like Arcane Frost build. There's probably gonna be one mage who's gonna be forced to go with Winter's Chill talent, because Winter's Chill talent is going to increase your frost damage, or at least increase the frost damage of all the other mages. So you'll just assign one mage who's gonna be like, just do it. Your damage doesn't really matter. You're probably gonna be doing less damage, but you're providing utility to all the other mages. Now, it's up to you who's going to be that mage, but a lot of the times spamming Frostbolt is going to be your main source of DPS. Again, I don't know whether you view this as fun or whether you view this as good. That's up to you. Now, if we look at Hunters, Hunters are a little bit different. I guess in terms of their builds and specializations, they can make use of a lot of different specializations at the very start. A lot of it is going to kind of depend on how you manage your pet, because pets can take a lot of damage in vanilla. You need to make sure they don't die and things like that. But overall, the rotation can be viewed as a bit more difficult, but there are macros for that as well. So you can really simplify it with the use of macros. So ranged in general, they're pretty decent. They might not be topping DPS meters if that's what you're really looking for. They're very viable. In terms of rotation, it's up to you. Classic is not going to be that difficult in terms of class rotations, especially in raid scenarios, but that can be viewed as a good thing. That can be viewed as a good thing for a lot of people who are coming to Classic WoW when it's going to be released. Now, if we look at healers, and I covered this in my healer kind of guide before, and there are a lot of viable healers. I feel all the healers are viable. I feel every single class and every single spec is viable because the raids are really not that hard. But I feel there is going to be class discrimination. I feel there is going to be raids. There are going to be guilds that are going to laugh at you if you want to play Elemental. They're going to laugh at you if you want to play Enhancement. They're going to laugh at you if you want to play Feral DPS. Just like in BFA when you're looking for Mythic Plus, if you're looking for a +10, they're gonna laugh at you if you're not playing the MDI specs. I still feel that's going to happen in Classic. It might not happen all the time, but I still feel there is going to be class discrimination. So a lot of the times, you know, if you play a Resto Druid, they might not be as popular because a lot of people will say Resto Druids, their HPS output is not great. They do provide a lot of utility with things like Fairy Fire, external innervates and things like that. So they do have a role in a raid, but a lot of people will be like, why are you playing Resto? Why are you playing Druid at all? Which again, I feel is a high over exaggeration because I feel Druids in general are one of the best hybrid classes. It's very fun to see, let's say, a Feral tank build. Feral tank build is actually it's quite viable and quite fun. You can off tank a lot of mobs, and when there's downtime you can DPS. So I feel Druid in general is one of the best hybrid classes. But some guilds might not see it that way. So that's why I'm making this video. In terms of healers, Paladins are amazing, and it's one of the healers that I'm looking to main possibly. Of course, if you want to play Paladin, you have to be Alliance, and if you want to play a Shaman, you have to go Horde. Paladins provide amazing blessings. Salvation is extremely strong for the Alliance side. And on top of that, Paladins can be regarded as one of the best healers because of how efficient they are. They will be spamming most of the time just one spell, which might be downranked, or maybe a couple of other spells, but Flash of Light is one of the core mechanics. So it's an efficient single target heal. There's not a whole lot of variation, so if you want to be a very strong single target healer with a lot of efficiency, Paladin is the choice. The blessings that you provide are unmatched. You're always going to be wanted in raids. Again, if you're playing a Retribution Paladin, a DPS Paladin, if you're playing a Protection Paladin, they are viable. You can get away with it, but there might be guilds who will just laugh at you, and you might be forced to play Holy. That is a very high chance of happening depending on which guilds you're going to join. Again, if you're playing Shaman on the Horde side, Restoration Shaman is probably the most popular spec in there, or the most popular build. Resto Shamans, Chain Heal is the king here. Shaman is one of the few healers that can provide really strong AoE healing. They can do very decent single target healing or tank healing as well. But Chain Heal is just so iconic, and it just feels so good to press it and see it in the raid. So I feel Resto Shaman is a very good choice and very fun choice. Priest overall, both sides can play Priest. They're basically good at everything. They're good at single target healing, they're good at AoE healing. There is going to be a lot of nostalgia in terms of Prayer of Healing. Prayer of Healing is only going to heal the group. So you're going to, before the raid starts, you're going to assign groups which you think are going to take the most damage. And Prayer of Healing is only going to heal them. So again, nostalgia trip if you're playing Priest. So I guess the summary of the video, or my advice, is that don't pay too much attention to this. There are people who will play Classic just to top meters. There are people who will play Classic just to play the best specs. Because there are people like in retail who will do the same exact thing. It's in the human nature to play a spec or a class that's perceived to be better than others. But a big difference in Classic is that you need to consider utility specs, hybrid specs. There are a lot of classes in Classic WoW that will provide a lot of utility to the raid. They will provide a lot of buffs that will help you to succeed. They might not top the meters in terms of healing or DPS, but they'll still be very mandatory. My advice, play the class that you enjoy, play with a group of friends, enjoy the leveling experience, because I feel leveling is a big portion of why Classic is great. Don't rush through leveling. One of the most fun parts for me is doing low level dungeons like Dead Mines and things like that with a group of friends and just having a good time. So enjoy Classic at your own pace. Don't feel the need to min-max everything, because I feel there's just too much min-maxing going on. This video to some extent is almost feeding into that, because people want to know, but I hope people will check the end of the video. Just play what you really enjoy, and unless you are trying to, hardcore everything, all of the specs or all of the classes have their own spot, their own niche. There are of course classes that might do better if you want to look good on the meters, but just enjoy Classic, and I hope you have great time when Classic comes out and you enjoy the class that you picked, because picking a main is very important. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoy this kind of content, subscribe to the channel, it helps out the channel. Let me know if you want to see more of these Classic videos, and I'll see you when Classic is released.